Hey, thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Make sure that you are subscribed and you're checking out the bell icon down there so that you're getting notifications. And as always, like, comment, and share. A couple of weeks ago, I started what I thought was going to be a pretty brief series on the importance of the military and protecting the military from
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire.
Marxist takeover, if you will, and why. I started off with the new Army recruitment ad that was geared towards people of a social justice mindset, and I talked about the dangers of the social justice warrior mentality permeating what should be the warrior mentality of the military. And then we went on and we talked a little bit more about how we need to honor the sacrifices of the men, especially who went before us and died for the cause of advancing liberty and republicanism into the world. I thought I was pretty much done, and then here, actually just yesterday, Jack Prosobiec, writing for Human Events, spoke about an individual in the military, a commander of a military unit. His name is Andrew Rhodes, and his woke leftist ideology and how it has permeated his command and what he's done. And Jack, excuse me, I screw his name up all the time. Jack has uncovered this man's deleted tweets, but here, why don't we just, so this is the story from the 9th that Jack wrote. He says, if you're white, you're the problem. This is Andrew Rhodes. He is the commander of the 1st of the 8th Infantry Fighting Eagles. He runs a private woke left-wing Twitter account under the name of Drew Rhodes. He goes on and he says things like, if you're a white male, you're part of the problem. He also reportedly, and as you can see here, Jack reports, he also reportedly added that only 0.01% of racist accusations are false, and that he would always believe someone coming forward about an uncomfortable situation. So the story had begun circulating on social media with one Instagram post catching some important attention, right? So, and I guess I don't need to go into a lot of detail on this, but I do want to, once again, if it's true, he said that, and this is somebody commenting, if you're a white male, you're part of the problem, then he's creating division within his formation. And that's exact opposite of what the Army has been trying to do with inclusion efforts. What I might seem discombobulated on this because I'm actually working really hard to not lose my temper right now. Look, I get it. I understand. Right now, it is culturally and societally acceptable for white people to hate themselves. Not only is it currently culturally and societally acceptable for white people to hate themselves, it's encouraged. It's being encouraged. This is happening everywhere. I believe it's the president of the Minneapolis City Council has said that critical race theory needs to be embedded into our culture. Critical race theory is racist. Critical race theory teaches that white people are evil. I know people who have sat through implicit bias training at different levels in retail, in public sector work, people who work for county and major metro social work departments, people who I have been contacted numerous times by people who have had to take implicit bias training as part of their law enforcement career, as part of their work as servers in restaurants. This is all over. It's everywhere. People are being trained to believe the worst of themselves. Probably not in South Dakota. Now, as a Reformed Calvinistic Christian, I don't believe people should have an inherently high view of themselves, but not because of their ethnicity, but because we are, by nature, born sinners. And one of the greatest problems facing humanity today is an overly inflated sense of self-esteem. But what's happening to our culture, what's happening to our society, is that it is being inundated with hatred for white people. And as I've said in other videos, this white culture, and I find that terribly offensive. Just as I would find a statement African culture or Asian culture, because those things don't exist. There's no amorphous African culture. There's no amorphous Asian culture. There's no amorphous Australian culture. There's no amorphous South American culture or North American culture. And look at that. Break that down to ethnicity or skin pigmentation. Is white culture is the only thing that's referred to that way, because there are people who will tell you if you use the phrase black culture, you're misspeaking, because black culture does not describe the totality of culture within the African American community, the black community, whatever it is, because there's a vast difference from area to area and even from region to region in what that culture looks like. But what we see in this event here, from this commander, this Andrew Rhodes in the Army, is an embracing of the leftist ideological perspective that white people must hate themselves, and they must see themselves as the sole enemy and proponent of evil in the United States. So much so that here you have this commander going out and enforcing this mentality into his command structure. And don't tell me it doesn't. He literally said he will 0.01% of all claims of racism are untrue. That means that 99.99% are true. Which means basically that almost the totality of all white people are racist, even in the military. And I will tell you from my experience in the military, it's patently untrue. I worked alongside and served alongside in the military people of literally every ethnicity. And that was well over 20 years ago. Now, this is dangerous. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to this guy. Do I believe he has a foundational constitutional right to his views? Sure, absolutely. Do I believe that he has a responsibility to ensure that his soldiers are treating one another with respect and dignity? Absolutely. Do I believe that, excuse me, do I believe that he should be taking woke ideological positions and impregnating the military with them? No, I don't, because it is not, it isn't the proper way to think. It is a form of Marxism. It is social Marxism, Gramscian Marxism, and it, by its very nature, is the enemy of what the military is supposed to be about. Not because it's anti-white. That's problematic enough. And there I use the word that everybody's okay with using, except I hate it, and most people who understand what it really means hate it as well. But if you want to use that word there on the left, that word, oh, you're problematic. In other words, you have an unpopular opinion, and it's dangerous, and therefore it should not be allowed. But the problematic nature of what Andrew Rhodes is doing is he's fostering the Marxist mentality into the military, and what that will do is it will fracture the military the way it is fracturing our culture and our society right now. And once you have begun to fracture the military, once you have begun to dissolve the bonds that hold the military together, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the independence and the independent dependence of one soldier to the next, and you now start to force them to look at each other and not see a fellow soldier, but to see a soldier of Asian descent, a soldier of African descent, a soldier of white descent. You know, notice that there again, not European, white. And then tell them that white people are the problem. That builds distrust. That builds a lack of strength. And it makes people say, ooh, he's white. She's white. I can't trust him. I can't trust her. Well, they hate me. Maybe they hate me. Maybe they're going to let me die. And what we've seen in this radicalization in our society, in our culture, and this is going to bleed into the military as we see it is already bleeding into the military. This is going to cause infighting. This will bring violence into the military. And there's already violence in the military. I'm sorry. Soldiers get drunk on the weekends. They fight. They will fight. Man, I had a fight with a fellow soldier in the motor pool in the middle of the week because we were disagreeing. And the other soldiers got around us. And they're like, you guys are going to fight this out. And we fought it out. Now, if there'd been a senior enlisted person there, a sergeant or something like that, we would have not been allowed. We would have been disciplined under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which this officer, Andrew Rhodes, says he doesn't like, which is a violation of his oath of office or his oath of service. We fight. The military is a violent place. It has to be a violent place. You have to be in a position where training to do violence is going to be constantly present. You're trained to kill. You're trained to destroy things. And so there's going to be violence. There's going to be conflict. Drunk soldiers are going to do stupid things to each other when they get angry. Sober soldiers are going to do stupid things to each other when they're angry, but they're also in that conflict, in those situations, are learning how to move on and forget, because that guy that I got into a fight with remained a good friend of mine afterwards, until we got out of the military and we lost touch with one another. But the kind of fighting that this is going to cause is going to cause a fracturing and a fission. Excuse me, almost a fault line of divisiveness in the military, where you might actually see enough hate and enough disparaging of white soldiers, white military people, where it might become okay for them to be targeted for violence. Or you might see them, disciplined punitively thrown out of the military, maybe even imprisoned, because maybe they are accused of doing something that's patently untrue, and the powers that be say, "Oh, well, that's a hate crime. You're going to a military prison for having committed a hate crime." We are not far in our society, let alone in our military, from seeing things like being guilty of something you're accused of for nothing more than the fact that you're white. This has no place in culture and society, period, but it definitely has no place in the military. It cannot be allowed to continue in the military. People like this need to be drummed out of all areas of public service, period. All areas of public service. They need to be drummed out of the military. They need to be drummed out of the public sector because they're dangerous and they're gaining ground. It's gaining ground. There are literally people in the public sector who are forcing this ideological position onto the people that they work with and supervise. And we're seeing it openly propagated in the military. Where's the outrage? Where's the outrage? This should be all over the media, and it's not. But I guarantee you that if this was turned around and pointed at the comments were made about another ethnicity by Andrew Rhodes, not only would he have been stripped of his command, he would have probably been dishonorably discharged from the military, if not charged with a crime. This is not the direction we want to see our military go. We shouldn't want to see our country head in this direction. But everybody will turn a blind eye. They'll look away from it because it's the right thing to do right now. Advocate for and teach hate against a particular ethnicity. And make no mistake, that's what this is. It's hatred for a particular ethnicity. The self-loathing that Andrew Rhodes holds in his heart because he's been taught that he should hate himself for being white. And now he is going to insist that people under his command also hate themselves for being white, and that it's okay to point out how white people are evil or sinful. As I recently read an article and then an essay about some training that a friend of mine out in, where was it? It was in Nevada, took. The original sin of the United States. And notice that religious language, that's Christian language, original sin. It makes me mad that they've stolen this. They've co-opted it. The original sin of the United States is white supremacy. First of all, the United States doesn't have original sin. But we're being taught that it does, and that it's a problem of white people. This has got to stop. But it won't. It won't. Because we have a commander-in-chief who is advocating for white guilt, white shame, the original sin of white supremacy, advocating for the belittling and besmirching of all white people until they acknowledge their racist ideological positions and admit that they are white supremacists and that they're racist. And if they deny those things, then that proves they're guilty. And if they admit that, that means they're guilty, and then they have to do the work of apologizing and admitting that guilt and killing it. Because as one radical black man has said, it's not enough to be not racist, you have to be anti-racist. And that means you have to run around and you have to identify all the racists in the world around you and make sure that they're called out and that they're dealt with, as long as they're white. Again, this is going to destroy our military. This is going to destroy our military. It is going to fracture and fission our military to the point that it's going to fall apart and there's going to be infighting. And then we're going to be ripe for destruction from foreign invaders. I mean, we're already seeing it. It's just not a violent war right now. But when it happens, our military is in terrible trouble. Because there's no loyalty to one another in this mentality. The fact that this man could get away with saying the things that he said, and the only reason that it's gone public is because a non-mainstream, non-legacy media outlet picked it up and ran with it. Legacy media is not going to touch this. I want to make it perfectly clear. I despise ethnic hatred. If you hate somebody because of the color of their skin or their ancestral origins, I hate you. I think it's that serious enough of a violation. I hate you. But it's not based on, oh, I hate you if you're black and you hate white people. I hate you if you're white and you hate black people. I hate you for propagating hatred. I would love to see you repent of that sin and turn away from it. But I am not going to hate somebody based on their ethnicity. And I'm not going to advocate for it. And I'm damn sure not going to advocate that white people feel guilty for being white. This crap has got to stop. It's got no place in culture, in society, in our nation. It's got no place in our military. And in anybody who teaches critical race theory, anybody who teaches implicit bias, anybody who teaches that white people are predominantly all racist and benefiting from white privilege and white supremacy, they're evil or they're stupid tools of the Marxist left. The useful idiots, as Lenin called them. It's time that we stood up and we talked about this boldly and called it out for what it is. It's got to end. And as always, until next time, make sure you are not worrying about your safety, but that you're fighting for your liberties and your freedoms. Sic semper, Tyrannus.